Good morning, everyone. My name is Connie Craig. I'm here with Lisa Neeb today. And the reason why I brought Lisa Neeb here to the forum is because when I was a school teacher at Ellenfield, I was part of the green team. And she'll explain what they do for schools, which is really neat. They repurpose the playground area to bring it to green, and there's a lot of good reasons for that, and I'm going to let her come and explain all that to you. And she's with Reflo, and there's some other programs along with that. So here she is. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for having me today. I'm really honored to be here to speak with your congregation. Again, my name is Lisa Neeb. I am Green and Healthy Schools Program Manager with the nonprofit Reflo. I'll talk all about the different program areas we have in our mission today. I love to take questions. Anything you're curious about, anything you want to know more about, I am your person, so ask me all the things. If something is like really interesting and you want to ask as we're going through slides, I am totally okay to kind of pause and answer that, or we can come back to it at the end of the presentation as well. So a little bit about me. I am an educator. I have spent most of my career as an informal educator, working in zoos, museums. I was a marine mammal care specialist, working with seals and sea lions, doing really awesome environmental education programming, and a lot of science inquiry, where I really let kids drive what we were learning and find the answer to their question. I spent some time as a school teacher. I was a high school science teacher for a few years, and then I really went back into inquiry because I really wanted to give space for kids to discover and find those answers on their own and guide them along the way. I found Reflo as a step in my career where it gave me opportunity to grow and learn new things about environmental education and about the environment and the school systems that we're working in. And so through my work, I have a really big pleasure of working with lots of different schools in our community and helping to transform their playground spaces to places that are really kind of dismal, covered in gray asphalt, into really pretty, vibrant places that are awesome for learning, that are great for social emotional connections, that provide a lot of environmental benefit, and lots of learning opportunities as well. Okay, so Reflo is the environmental nonprofit that I work for here in Milwaukee. We are a small and mighty team. We have 10 folks on staff, and we're really organized around water sustainability and education in our community. We serve Milwaukee. That's where all of our team lives. It's where most of our team grew up. Many of our team are graduates from Milwaukee Public Schools, and we feel it's really important that we give back to the community that we live in, and that we actually do the work that we talk about doing. We do a lot of strategizing, a lot of planning together, and then we find ways to make those projects real in our community. And we do that through different program areas. We have 5. So I'm Green and Healthy Schools Program Manager. I'll spend most of our time talking about that today. But we also have a program focused on innovative placemaking and rainwater harvesting, where we're looking for underutilized spaces in our community and working with folks to revitalize those spaces. We have Milwaukee Water Stories, which focuses on building connection with folks and water in Milwaukee. We'll talk through some of the tools and resources we have for that. We have an urban wood workshop on site at our office, where we have a workshop manager who is actively building beautiful things out of wood and fallen trees that are collected in the city and repurposing those to go back into schoolyards and community spaces. And then we have high school internship program as well. So we'll spend some time talking about each and every one of those as we go. Okay. Our team is pretty unique in the fact that we have some expertise in different areas. I'm an educator. We have a couple other folks who are environmental educators spending time out in the field with kids. Our executive director is an environmental engineer, so he brings a very different perspective to the built projects that we focus on. We have communicators, we have storytellers, we have different mentors who are working with the youth in our programming. And so bringing us all together, we can share those different skill sets that we have and help make each other stronger and help penetrate that into the different program areas that we have. Through this work, we have supported more than 40 schools in Milwaukee Public School System. We'll see some examples of those transformations today, and have supported many, many folks in the community through these different program areas. So green and healthy schools is where I spend the majority of my time. What we see in our community are far too often spaces that look like this top picture. So there is a lot of asphalt on urban schoolyards. That is not something that only happens in Milwaukee. It is unfortunately very common in large urban districts in cities around the nation. So there is an overarching effort, regionally, nationally, to do something about these urban schoolyards that are pretty uninspiring. They don't offer a lot of options for young people to do when they go outside, and they really create some different issues, not only for the children who are playing on those spaces that might get hurt, but also from an environmental impact. And so we saw these schoolyards as an opportunity to do something better that can hit multiple benefits for our community. So we work with folks to actively come up with a plan to transform these spaces into really beautiful living schoolyards that have green spaces, that have shade, that have trees, that are collecting water when it rains to help reduce flooding, that creates habitat in places that were really barren before. We do that all through community engagement. We meet with folks of all ages, of all backgrounds that have interest in the projects that we're working on. So that means talking with young people, the students in the schools we support, the neighbors who are nearby the project sites, bringing together community partners, anyone who really has a vested interest in the space. We want to speak to them. We want to hear their opinions. We want to know what's important to them, because all of the projects we work on are in publicly accessible spaces. We want them to meet the needs of folks as best as we can, and as creatively as we can, to bring all those people together so they all feel comfortable using those spaces. We also have a support with the Green Schools Consortium of Milwaukee. So this bottom picture here shows a photo of our annual conference, where we gather about 500 people in the Milwaukee area, and others from across the state, and sometimes across state borders, who actually come to Milwaukee so we can gather and inspire each other about this Green and Healthy Schools work. We share stories, we have sessions, we have a huge exhibitor hall where folks are sharing resources and coming up with ways that we can help support each other as we all work towards a greener, healthier future for our kids and for our environment. So we often are asked, why Milwaukee Public Schools? Why is that our focus area when we talk about green and healthy schools? Because there's such significant need across the state. This map is just showing the southeastern Wisconsin counties. Each one of the dots represents a school that is in the Milwaukee and southeastern area. So there are hundreds of schools. Whether they be Milwaukee Public Schools or another district, there is significant amount of need and interest from folks that are supporting young people in schools to have something greener and healthier to help inspire those children. When we look at the distribution of schools, Milwaukee Public Schools kind of rises to the top. It's one of the largest landowners in the city of Milwaukee. It has lots of impervious surface where water can't go through the ground cover, like the asphalt and the concrete. Instead, it hits the ground and it runs off, and it can create flooding issues, or it can ice over and create really slippery spots during the winter time, and other conditions that happen on the asphalt as well. And so by looking at the need and the distribution across our community, we really decided to focus on Milwaukee Public Schools, and we have strong partnerships to do that. And we also will support other schools outside of the MPS district as well if there's interest from those communities. Now, to continue to talk about the need and the focus on the schools we support, this map is highlighting the Area Deprivation Index, which is a combination of data points that are pulled together through the EPA that is considering socioeconomic status, as well as disadvantaged neighborhoods and other criteria to help address where we could have some projects that can really impact areas that are in higher need. So the blue boundary line is Milwaukee. The green dots are the green schools that we have been supporting through the Green and Healthy Schools program with Reflo and our project partners. And the darkest red colors are the areas of highest need. Now, if you compare this map to a map of historic redlining in Milwaukee, they are very, very similar. So when redlining occurred decades ago, those practices have made lasting effects that are still felt in 2024 in our city. And so when we look at that need, we look at these areas of our community that deserve beautiful spaces. And the children who live in those spaces, there's a real opportunity to do good for kids, to do good for the neighbors, and do good for the environment by working on these projects. So I'm gonna show you some photos of before and after of some of the school projects that we have worked with. Reflo has been a nonprofit for about 13 years. About 10 of those we have worked in some capacity with the Milwaukee Public School District on these green schoolyard projects. We take on 5 schools a year to go through the transformation. They start their journey in that first year, and it takes over 3 years to get through to the final transform project. This is an image of Longfellow School, which is on the south side of Milwaukee, about 21st and Scott, near National Avenue. They are one of the schools in the very first cohort of projects. So this was their schoolyard before. And then here, there's an aerial of the schoolyard after. So you can see that there's been a significant amount of asphalt removed from that schoolyard to provide new spaces for kids and for the community. You know, we think about things like where the stormwater goes when it rains. That's a driving factor of the designs that we work on, because we want to be able to capture that water, to clean the water and slow it down before it goes into the sewer system. That work with green infrastructure is super important because it ultimately helps keep Lake Michigan cleaner and helps improve the environment and the habitat for the animals and plants that live there, and then ultimately us, because we use that water too as it comes back into our homes and into our businesses after it's gone through cleaning at the water reclamation facility and then cleaning again when it comes through Milwaukee Waterworks and back to our homes. We talk to the community about things that are important to them. These kids love soccer at Longfellow. So we gave them a soccer field. And what's awesome about this is it can provide the recreational needs and interest for those families and kids in the community, but it also helps us collect water because we can store it underneath that synthetic turf field and help reduce flooding and make all those other benefits possible with dual purpose. And there's a greenhouse on this schoolyard. There's gathering spaces for outdoor teaching, different planted areas, a few trees. This was cohort 1, built in 2019. We have significantly increased the number of trees that are being planted each year because of the success of these projects. This is a school on the north side of Milwaukee, on like 23rd and Nash. This is Benjamin Franklin. Speaking with that school community, they had other interests. Soccer was not as much of a driver for this project, but thinking about ways to really promote nature connections was. So you can see there's pathways that kind of loop around the different green spaces, lots of gathering and seating areas to provide calm down, different areas for play. This is a gaga ball pit. You might see these popping up at schoolyards around the city. It's another recreation thing that kids can do that really is fun and active outside. We don't remove all the asphalt because asphalt and hardscape has a role in our community, but we work with the schools we support to find the pathways and the things that are most important for those folks to meet as many needs as we can. I know Connie is currently teaching at this school. This is Bayview Montessori's Umper campus in Bayview. They are a Montessori school, so there's a really strong focus on outdoor teaching and connection to nature and discovery and inquiry outside. So being a Montessori school, the curriculum really drove a lot of the design that you'll see as I go here. Okay. This school has 4 outdoor learning spaces because that was such a high interest for this community. They all serve different purposes. So there is an outdoor amphitheater here that can be used during recess time for theatrical play, just kind of like a hangout spot. You could use it for outdoor performance. You could use it for a graduation ceremony. Flexible spaces are kind of the name of the game. We're trying to hit as many of those interests as we can and allowing folks to be creative in their implementation of those spaces. There's another outdoor classroom here. This one is more focused on science. It's right next to a bioswale that has lots of beautiful Wisconsin native plants inside of it. It brings butterflies, it brings birds, it brings bunnies. So now there's urban wildlife where kids are, where they can observe them, where they can learn from them, and appreciate a really beautiful green space in a space that was not beautiful and green before. Yeah, I have a question. Oh, at schools? So in Milwaukee Public Schools, you don't see those features like swings and merry-go-rounds as often. They take up a lot of space on the schoolyard, and only a few kids can play on swings at a time. And so there's been some kind of trade-offs in those different play features based on size and space at each of the school communities. So much of the work that Reflo is supporting is not your traditional post and platform playground structure. Sometimes we do. It depends on if that's a need for the community and if there's funding to support that. But you can see here at Bayview, they actually have one of those more traditional playgrounds back here in the corner. That was something implemented by the school and the district ahead of this project. What we are often implementing are things called nature play, which are wooden structures that have less prescribed ways to play. They're more creative and more open-ended, so kids can create their own play and games while they're out in those spaces. And I have a couple more close-up photos of that when we get there. Thank you for that question. Here's another example. This is Niscara. This is near MPS Central Office on Hawley and Valete, if folks are familiar. So west side of Milwaukee. Again, significant amount of asphalt space and opportunity. And a transformation to have a grass turf field so they could play soccer, football, multi-play sports. This island of green as a destination point with an outdoor classroom, lots of trees, gaga ball. This project did receive a whole new traditional post and platform playground as part of their project. These bioswales again, this is where the low points are on the schoolyard. The water's gonna naturally flow there, so we're giving them some beautiful things to grow in those spaces. So there's lots of flowers, lots of trees, lots of plants that help to create a really beautiful transformed space. There are also these things called traffic gardens. You guys can kind of see these lines that look like roads. Those are a newer painting plan that have been introduced to schools, where it's actually teaching kids the rules of the road, like how to drive safely on the right versus the left, how to cross at crosswalks. And there's a lot of curriculum and partners that help support that teaching for young people, and they can practice that on their schoolyard or come ride a bike after school and have a lane that they can follow and play along to. And then if you remember when I first started talking about schools, this was the school in the top left corner. This is Kluge Elementary on the north side of Milwaukee, about 67th and a little north of Silver Spring. This schoolyard is about a block and a half of asphalt. A huge opportunity for something better. And the transformation at this site is phenomenal. There was so much opportunity to remove that hardscape, repurpose that for meaningful play, for meaningful recreation, for options for kids, to help reduce flooding that was happening in their neighborhood by implementing these green spaces that fill all of those buckets. And it totally transforms the way kids play, how they engage with each other, how conflict resolution happens on a playground, because now kids have stuff to do. And they have places where they can make choices. And they can opt to have a quiet spot if they want it. And they can opt for the really high energy spot if that's what they're looking for. But it's not making kids do all the same. It's providing so much opportunity for choice. And then teachers love that because it gives them so much opportunity to teach and to explore and go outside for like a calm down moment or go outside for a cool down moment because now there's shade and there's trees and there's nature that kids that go to many of these schools don't often have access to near their homes. And so we're building these really beautiful community spaces together that kids can access at school and folks can access after school because they're all publicly open to anyone who wants to come and visit them. Yeah, I have a question. This is a wonderful question. This question is yep, how did the schools have so much hardscape in the first place? So if we look back in history, back in the 60s, there was a huge transformation to lower maintenance. And so the solution was pave them over. If the playgrounds are essentially a parking lot, they don't take much care and maintenance. You just shovel it once in a while or plow it, maybe throw down some salt or let it be in those really cold winter months. And so it really was a maintenance decision made back in the 60s. There have been some small interventions since then, and if you look back at historical aerials of the schools, it's really interesting. Some schools you'll see that they actually like cut out a little bit of the asphalt and put in green space. Some schools still have that small intervention. Some schools, they repaved that green space. And there's lots of drivers to these decisions, and there's lots of stakeholders who are making these decisions. And so what we have been really lucky is that through partnership with the public school systems, through this whole initiative and movement to support greener, healthier schools, we are working together to actively change that. But every time we put something down that's not asphalt, it creates work. It creates an opportunity for maintenance and stewardship, and it all requires love. So you need a lot of buy-in from the folks who are opting into these programs. And so that's a really important piece of this work. Folks are actively choosing to go through it. We are not saying, you have a bunch of asphalt, you get a green school. Folks actively apply to be considered for the process. I'll get to that. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So the question is the application process a barrier? The application process or the project in general? Yeah. Yes. So again, so we're trying to talk about the barriers for becoming a green and healthy school. So I'm just going to flip through. This is just another example. I think my next slide will help. Okay. Just an example of Hawthorne School on the north side, then showing the activation of these spaces. So like actively moving performances that were happening in a gym inside the school building to outside and welcoming families to actively be in these spaces. And then I promise you, I swear it's the next slide. I'm gonna come back to this one. Okay, this is the one I want. Okay, so going back to barriers and how this process works. Yes, the school applies. The application process is admittedly it's a pretty low-level application. It's a Google form. It has about 10 questions on it. The MPS Grants Department is a supporter for all of these school projects, so we have strong partnership with those folks who actively review applications from schools, help answer the questions, help prepare schools to apply. Once schools submit their application, and we do a lot of outreach in lots of ways too. That Green Schools Consortium is a big piece of it. We work with many departments in the school district to help share the opportunity out when it is available and offer support to these schools. When schools apply, there is an application review that brings the number of applications down to 10. And then 10 schools each year are invited to apply or to present at a school selection event. There are about 100 folks that represent the Milwaukee community that are invited to that event. The folks in the room listen to each of those schools' pitches, and every person in that room gets to vote for which 5 schools they want to move forward. Based on the collective vote, those 5 schools are the ones that move ahead. If they're a school that was not selected this current year, we reach out with additional resources to help prepare them for next year, or help figure out which initiative they're most interested in now, and then we can help connect with community partners or grants or different opportunities to help them keep making progress, even if they weren't selected for the full project. Reflo plays a really important role in all of this because as a nonprofit partner, we are the folks who are actively moving and supporting these schools from the very beginning all the way through greening and past. The school district, there are many different departments that are supporting, but there's not one department that is able to dedicate that time and effort to see this all through. So as a nonprofit, we make it part of our mission and our daily work to support through conceptual planning, which takes a year for each school to make sure we're incorporating all of that feedback from stakeholders and coming up with a feasible plan. And then through fundraising, because no money is allocated in the school district to support these projects. Every year we start with $0 and working with partners, working with the grants department, working with the NPS Foundation, and many other folks that are supporters, we raise $8-ish million a year to support 5 school projects. And it is hard. And every year we are banking on those grants to come in. The schools themselves, we ask for a $10,000 contribution from each school. Every school we have worked with in MPS has been able to achieve that $10,000 level. They have 3+ years to raise that, and we give lots of support and ways to do it along the way. Some schools are able to go past that $10,000. We know that not every community has the same resources. So we're trying to make things as accessible and as equitable for folks as we can, and then providing support in the background to make these projects happen. I'm so sorry, friends. Once we get through the fundraising and we know the dollars that have been raised, that really informs what gets built in the projects. So we hope that the money that we are targeting that we need, and the money we raise, and the money that the designers say it will cost, and the money that the contractors say they want to be paid to build it match. We hope that all those stars align and that we can build these really beautiful transformative projects. And the awesome news is we have been successful for 6 years. And we continue to move forward, and we have really awesome momentum behind us. And when you look at the state of green schools in the nation, folks from other cities look to Milwaukee. We are not as far along as some cities, but we are a really great model that folks will actually travel from other states and come to Milwaukee to tour our schools and learn about the process and learn about how we are supporting from the beginning of the idea all the way through the implementation, because there's something special that's happening here, and there is a lot of support to keep it going. To continue that support, something that we do is we celebrate these schools. We just celebrated the 6th cohort of Green Schoolyard projects. We give opportunities for lots of folks to talk about the impact that it's happening at their school, like this young lady here, middle school student from Morris Middle. We showcase those really important transformative spaces. All of this was asphalt before. Their playground structure is still here, but all of this was asphalt. We give new play spaces, and we really encourage folks to use them. And then we do a big ceremony and there's usually press coverage because we know that you need to have the word out there to continue to garner that support. So through the impact of those 6 completed cohorts, here are some stats. We've raised about $28 million to support those schools. We've removed about 15 football fields of asphalt from schoolyards. We are capturing about 3 million gallons of water every time it rains, which is super significant for making sure we don't overload our sewer systems and we keep the lake clean. We've planted 3,700 trees. Many of those were at Vincent High School, which is on the northwest side of Milwaukee. They have a hardwood forest that received about 2,700 of those trees. Lots of new native habitat and thousands of folks who are impacted by this every single day because they're publicly accessible spaces that we can all go to and we all can enjoy. Yeah.
You mentioned the hydrogen graders.
So Mr. Bruce Wiggins over here has got a good question about the Medical College of Wisconsin and our partnership. Bruce is on it. So we do work with lots of different partners. Medical College is one of them. So we know anecdotally, and we really know in our hearts what the benefits of these projects are, but you need the research that proves it. So the Medical College has been helping us with pre-greening and post-greening data collection, where we're looking at the active use of sites before they go into construction and after. Kids voluntarily sign up to participate. They wear accelerometers and GPS trackers so we can see how many steps they're taking, how fast they're moving, what their activity levels are, and then we can actually map them on a schoolyard to see where they play before and after, and then compare how they're using spaces before and after. There's a social emotional survey component to that as well. There's an environmental literacy component to that data collection as well. Are these green spaces actively helping kids build a stronger connection to nature, to care more about the environment, and want to do their part to protect it? We're trying to find out if the data supports that. And we're also helping to support teachers through that process as well. So we have some data. It's still being analyzed. I don't have anything published yet, but Medical College is working on it. Thank you, Bruce. So, yeah, so the question has to do with some of the research and possibly medical colleges' participation in talking about gun violence and accessibility, and if there's opportunity to interconnect that with the schools. The work that we're doing is not connected to gun violence. We're really focusing on trying to find the impact of the direct intervention of the greener, healthier schoolyard. Personally and organizationally, yes, we care about that issue, and we are really hoping that, you know, if you're ultimately, I'm going to step it back from that higher level violence, but to, you know, like conflict resolution that's happening on a playground. You know, kids have big feelings. Things happen outside of school, at school, during the day, 3 weeks ago. There are things that we're all dealing with, and kids are holding on to that. So if they have a schoolyard that doesn't offer a lot of choice, it doesn't give them a place to go, doesn't give them an outlet for what they are needing in that moment based on what they're dealing with, conflicts happen. They don't know how to get away from each other. They don't know how to articulate. If you give space, and you give choice, and you start to model these different behavioral things and collaboration and working together, which is how these projects happen, kids see that and they feel that, and everyone starts to embody that. It doesn't happen overnight, but it is helping to support those efforts. So I think there's a indirect tie, at least from a conflict and a behavioral change connection. Oh, I have a couple more questions. Yes, yes, ma'am. We do. You like set me up for my next slide. So the question is related to environmental education and if we're supporting the outdoor education connections that are possible. So absolutely. So again, I'm a teacher, environmental educator at heart. So this is my jam. We actively do teaching at schoolyards. So this top one is at Clement Avenue School, where we're leading kids through their bioswale so they can learn about those green spaces. We've done several programs at school and in the community. We actively host environmental education programs at Green Tech Station, which is on 31st and Capitol, behind the old Ned's Pizza. Folks usually remember that. It's a whole revitalized site that we worked with many project partners to make this really beautiful green infrastructure destination and educational gathering spot. So we're doing a lot of field trips, we do a lot of teacher PD, we do a lot of model teaching, and then we share resources as well. So I have some lessons that are really easy to share out, but we encourage folks to come to that annual conference so they can continue connecting with each other and other resource providers so they can continue to build that together. Yeah. Mhm. Awesome. So 2 questions. First one is about trees and why we're planting them. 100% trees bring shade, not immediately, but they will grow to be beautiful shade trees. And right now, if you're out on one of those open schoolyards, there is very little shade. It is so hot. The temperature of the asphalt school ground is significantly higher than a green space is, because of the color and because of how it is absorbing and holding heat. We are actively also doing studies on surface temperature, the different substrates that go down at different schoolyards, and making choices based on those temperature differences, while also considering safety and usability of space. So like a synthetic turf soccer field is made of synthetic material that can hold heat. But having it be synthetic allows us to play on it for a lot longer without it getting muddy, without it getting lots of like divots and bumps in the ground. So there's a trade-off on usability, material choice, the surface temperature, and all the things. So by considering those factors, we plant more trees along the soccer field because then they'll shade the soccer field area and we'll start to ultimately have all these co-benefits together. So trees are a really important piece, and we have significantly increased the number that are being planted, and we continue to push the landscape architect's boundaries on how many trees we want and what species of trees we would like. But there's many, many design considerations that go into it. And then second part of your question, I lost. Oh, yes. So how do we involve the neighborhood community? We host, I guess I'll step back. Each school that starts the conceptual planning process meets with Reflo every month, except for summer, for 3 years. So we do monthly green team meetings with each individual school. Those green team meetings are open and accessible to anyone who wants to go. Usually the school principal is the person to contact just so they feel comfortable with who's joining those meetings. So those happen monthly. We have some of those that are more public access and more open house style. And so we will invite the community to those. The schools help with outreach. There have been community partners who have helped with canvassing and putting out flyers and things as well. And so we help provide some resources and ideas to each of the school communities, and we do some of our own outreach, and then we leave it on the school community because they know their people and their neighbors to continue to pull people in. These are just a couple more examples of some of the outdoor teaching. We do have outdoor discovery carts that our team builds as well, which are active outdoor teaching carts that have lots of outdoor observation tools and resources and writing surfaces and magnetic surfaces, and trying to find ways that we can easily go outside and teach and have the things you need when you get there to support your kids. So that was a big deep dive in green schools. I don't know what time I'm at. I'm probably over. I'm going to super quick fire other 4 program areas, I promise. Okay, so water stories program. This is where we are showcasing those water stories and have lots of resources. If any of you all are interested in mapping, we have a Milwaukee community map where you can toggle on and off different layers that will show you different connections to water in our community, from watersheds to the combined sewer areas in the city, to deeper dives that look at flooding events that have happened. There's a wealth of information there. And then we have really specific programming and video storytelling and ways that we are connecting folks to water in Milwaukee. We really focus on the folks in those communities. So this kind of gets back to the outreach and stakeholder engagement that's happening. Through water stories, there's also a connection to watermarks. If anyone has noticed, there's poles around the city with big blue letters on top of them. One just went in outside of the Baird Center in the last couple of weeks. One went in Lindsay Heights. There's one at Green Tech Station. There's a couple on the south side. These water markers are letters on these poles that are meant to flash when there are moments of really high rain events. And so if you see that flashing letter, it's supposed to be an indicator for us as a community to reduce our own water use at home. So we're lessening how much water is going into the sewer system because nature's taking care of that. So we ultimately are not overloading the facilities that clean our water before it goes into the lakes. So there's a lot of community engagement that goes into those projects because something is being built in their community, and we want folks to have a connection to it. So we speak with folks about what the letter should be. What does that letter represent? Who might be impacted? How is this a benefit? And all of those different factors as well. And then again, deeper dives into different topics. We've just had a whole series on urban Milwaukee. I think there's 12 articles focused on different water topics written by Michael Tim, who is our water storyteller and program manager at Reflo, where he has done significant dives into different things, including salt connections, cultural connections to water, and I think his most recent story is on the beaver community in Milwaukee and how our restoration efforts are actually actively helping to bring back a species that has not really been in the city in a long time. Those innovative placemaking areas I alluded to at the very beginning, these are different spaces in the city that have opportunity to be greened and bring community engagement. So an example is Fonde Park, right next to where the farmers market is. This is a really beautiful green space meant for gathering. There's a presentation area. We actually hosted one of our Green and Healthy Schools conferences here a few years ago. There's park spaces like Paleofito Park and Walker's Point, where we've worked with partners to develop these different, performing arts areas with green infrastructure and gathering and different programming. Again, those outdoor discovery carts that we're using at schools, and schools can actively have their own cart. So they have access to those materials. And then this is an overhead of Green Tech Station, again on 31st and Capitol, where I do most of my outdoor teaching now. Alice's Garden has been a longtime project partner with us. We helped to install their underground cistern that they use to irrigate their crops at the community garden, and then different rainwater harvesting systems at different sites across the city. And then Cream City Farms is an urban farm and co-op on 30th and Brown, which we help to support as well. And there are opportunities for CSA programs through Cream City Farms. This is an Urban Wood Initiative, again, using as much reclaimed wood from the city as possible to build these outdoor discovery carts with live edge and natural features. Constructing goggle pits at schools so that kids have another opportunity to play. Seating is significantly important in all these projects, having somewhere to just sit and rest and connect with one another. whether it be an outdoor classroom or just a quiet spot along a pathway, so we can build these really beautiful natural benches. And then we do recognition of folks who are doing awesome things in the green and healthy community through an awards program with our annual conference. We do. So Urban Ecology Center is a partner. We do some similar work. Our biggest partnership is with the Environmental Youth Collaborative, which is 13 different nonprofit organizations in Milwaukee who are working together instead of against each other to support environmental programming and internships for our young people. I have a slide on that really quick. Reflo has an internship program. I know I'm almost out of time. We do 2 different programs, one in the summer that's really focused on land conservation, stewardship, and taking care of spaces like our green schoolyards. There's lots of career opportunities and learning opportunities there. And these young people actively go to each of our green schoolyards to help take care of them during the summertime when teachers are not in session. In the school year, we have lots of young people from Milwaukee Public Schools that join our program to do sustainability projects at their school. Right now, we have 16 kids from Bradley Tech, North Division High School, and from Milwaukee School of Languages that are working on their own sustainability projects on things that matter to them, and we support them in implementing those in their community. And then the Environmental Youth Collaborative. Again, these different organizations that are here are all part of that collaborative. We have been writing joint grant opportunities to support the work that all of us are doing, and then there's an equitable distribution of that funding across all of our orgs. We are doing a lot of collaborative planning together. We do a staff and programming retreat to kind of plan what the year ahead will look like and what our collaborative opportunities are for the program leaders and the young people that we employ. Together, we employ about 125 to 150 teenagers in the summer in meaningful work where they're building career skills and they're finding out if this is a path they want to take, or maybe they meet a different organization that they want to intern at next summer. So it's providing these really cool pathways for young people, ages 14 to 24, to experience that environmental world and learn that they can earn a living wage and still do work that is meaningful to them. We do lots of really cool interactive and collaborative things for those young people. We get them together for social events so they can meet their peers, they can build their own network of folks who share common interests, and then we do these other social events to bring folks together so they can learn and develop with each other. This is my last slide. See, I got it. I did it. I did it. Okay, good. More. Okay, good. Thanks, guys. Okay, I got Mark real quick, because Mark's probably keeping me on time. Oh, okay. Oh, lovely questions. Okay, so we have lots of partners and lots of grantors. It depends on which project we're talking about, honestly. When we're thinking about grantors, I'm going to show something really quick. For green schools, specifically, I have a slide over here that will have our supporting partners that have been, significant contributors year after year that come back. Reflo does have partnership. We work with Milwaukee Public Schools to do these different projects, but we have a contract with the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District to actually do the conceptual planning work with schools. And so there needed to be, a dedicated organization to support those schools, to gather those ideas, to make the plan. So we are funded to do the plan, and then we voluntarily stay on to support fundraising and the other pieces, because we feel it's really important that there's continuity in the process. And if we only develop a plan and then we walk away, we don't, those school communities might not have the resources to fundraise millions of dollars and continue to make these projects happen. So these folks have all been significant supporters in the past. You know, we do work with different departments in the city of Milwaukee. So DPW, the Environmental Collaboration Office, Forestry Department have all been really supportive and often have different buckets of money that they can contribute to these projects. That funding is usually for the green infrastructure, so the removing of asphalt, transforming into green space, trees, the bioswales, the native plants, all of those things. And then we need additional support for the recreation features and education features, which the MPS Foundation has been supportive in, and other more federal funded programs like from the Environmental Protection Agency, USDA, and other folks. But we do look regionally, statewide, nationally. We are seeking tons of grants all the time because we're actively raising about $8 million every year to support 5 schools. Yep.
More and more places are acknowledging the lands that Native Americans
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if there's some way that you can incorporate that into the
Yes.
school, maybe working in a way with the community school here in Milwaukee, which is pretty special. And I was thinking about things like on the schoolyards, you have some sort of plants that
Mm-hmm.
are specific for Native Americans, maybe things like that.
I love your Indigenous connections. We do support a couple different connections to Indigenous culture with the schoolyard projects. We just met with the First Nations program in MPS on Thursday last week to finalize some of those details. So part of these projects receive signage that are, you know, honoring the donors and the grant funders and the folks that are supporting the project. With that comes a really big opportunity to highlight more. So each of those signs has a land acknowledgement in English and Spanish on it, and so we're always acknowledging the land we are on. And then we are talking about incorporating specific plant species that are important to Indigenous culture, sugar maple being one that's an easy one to implement across the district because maple sugaring is such an important connection. And there are a couple other plant species. When we do school gardens, we often see Three Sisters gardens and other connections to different planting schemes depending on the cultures of students that are in those schools. So there's connection that way. And then we also are working to implement some other signage. There's opportunity in lots of different ways. But you know, Indigenous art on peace posts that are out on the schoolyard, as well as a medicine wheel and a compass rose, because the directions are so important to Indigenous cultures. So we're working on appropriate placement, not only like directionally, but also where on the schoolyard to provide enough recognition for those elements that are going in connection with First Nations programming. So thank you for that. Anything else? I appreciate y'all listening to me. I could talk for days about this stuff. Awesome, thank you.